I knew that dupes were coming. Were they uncomfortable? Did they feel like cheating? Did I feel like you're just copying all of the hard work and money I've poured into my R&D? And yeah, I had all those feelings. I had all the feelings. But when you create a category, Sammi, you can't live in that category by yourself. You need to have competition to market against.
I'm Sammi Cohen, and this is Social Currency, a podcast that unpacks the stories that are shaping business, culture, and the intersection of the two. My guest today is Rea Ann Silva, the founder and CEO of Beautyblender. She is a pioneer in the beauty industry, and even if you're not a consumer in the makeup space, you've probably still seen her hero product, which is a pink teardrop-shaped makeup sponge. And if you're one of those people I just mentioned, someone who isn't a makeup consumer, you might be thinking, how big of a business could this really be? Well, Rea Ann has sold over 100 million units of her hero product, so it's big. But creating a category has a dark side, and we talk about that. Rea Ann and I talk about the rise of dupes, the knockoffs of her brand, and how she's approached them head on. We also talk about her decision to not raise outside capital. And because that's one of the most critical decisions that a founder will make, I found Rea Ann's insights to be really insightful. She's also built an American-made brand, and we talked about the importance of that well before President Trump had announced the tariffs. So this conversation is really more relevant than ever. This is Rea Ann Silva's Social Currency. Rea Ann Silva, welcome to Social Currency.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you, Sammi. It's so fun to finally meet you.
Likewise. So to kick us off, you were working as a full-time makeup artist when you came up with the idea for Beautyblender. So what was the initial insight that allowed you to come up with this idea?
So I am still a makeup artist. I still work, believe it or not. Let's go back in time and picture the time that high definition, which is now everywhere, right? Everything is high def, everything is digital, but it was like a really modern concept at that point. I was department heading a show that was the first show being shot and broadcast in high definition. And my challenge was to make these beautiful women on that show look like they weren't wearing makeup. And the techniques of makeup application for film and television was very different then. The products were very different. You would look like you were wearing, an inch thick of makeup. It looked very unnatural. But when you started shooting in high definition, everything showed. So I needed to find a technique to make these girls look beautiful and natural because they were beautiful. And that's where Beautyblender became the creation and the tool that helped me achieve that kind of very modern, high definition makeup for film and television look.
Amazing. So with your experience as a professional makeup artist, I'd love to hear about how working in the industry every day shaped your approach to product design. And can you use the story of designing your very first prototype as an example?
Sure. So first of all, like makeup artists that do film and television and really, photography, editorial, all professionally trained or untrained, but let's call it production type makeup artists. I like to say we kind of MacGyver things on set in real time, problem solving, because we need to do our job that day very well because we're unemployed every day. So you want to work the next day. So it's very, very crucial to the development of Beautyblender, the fact that I was a makeup artist, number one, because I don't think a normal person would ever have cut a wedge sponge into a teardrop shape to prevent lines of demarcation for close-ups. I mean, that
Totally.
just isn't the kind of way consumers think. Although, everybody now has a selfie and a video, so maybe they would think that way. I don't know, but I was the first to do it. Thank God, lightning bolt.
So you had said you MacGyvered your way to the first product.
Yes.
And once you had that initial product and you realized that this was something that was potentially scalable, how did you even go about finding your first manufacturing partners?
Okay, well, let's go back and just understand that I didn't even know what scalable meant. Okay.
Okay.
I was just trying to solve a problem that I had on set on this particular show. So I found my initial manufacturing partners in a very kind of strange way because there was nothing like Beautyblender.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Most cosmetic companies, which I did know people at, they didn't focus on tools. So, as a busy makeup artist, I traveled the world with my celebrity clients, and everywhere I would go, whether it was Europe, Asia, different states within the United States, I would look to the drugstores and I would look on the back of the packages to find out who was making the triangular wedge sponges and distributing them to consumers, because I figured they would be the first step to trying to understand how I could make more than one at a time. Because
Yep.
literally I was cutting sponges every morning before we started to shoot. So I looked on the back of these packages and I realized that there were very few manufacturers that actually made these sponge products. And I found one that was based in the United States in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Okay, it comes full circle because that's where the company is based now, correct?
It is.
Yep. My next question is more so around strategy. So, Beautyblender started as a one product company, which is very different from where it is today. But did the fact that you were a one product company help you or hurt you in the beginning?
Helped me. Absolutely helped me. It was less expensive to create one product. Actually, it was two products. It was Beauty Blender and Blender Cleanser, which was also the world's first sponge cleanser, because nobody was ever taught, listen, nobody was ever taught what to do with your sponge.
Yep.
It would be kind of like this, kind of additional product that you would get whenever you bought a foundation, or something you would see in a drugstore in a bag of 12, or what, like there was no education around a beauty sponge. It was never created really to actually help you put makeup on. It was just kind of this gratuitous product that
Yeah.
we didn't know what to do with. So for me, that was the real opportunity. But so Blender Cleanser was the first sponge
Got it.
cleanser. So it was two. I would absolutely say starting small and having one or two products is economically more feasible for any entrepreneur trying to start a business, rather than imagine having, a lineup of 50 SKUs to be trying to manage and manufacture. So absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like that is one hurdle that early entrepreneurs who have this idea for a CPG product of any kind, and many early stage founders get ahead of themselves and think, okay, if I'm rolling out a SKU, I need to have 12 different versions of that SKU or come out with different products that complement it. And it's really refreshing to hear that your more specific approach to just your first two products ended up working out well for you. So I want to talk a little bit about the money side of things.
Oh
Because
boy. Okay.
so funding and resources are usually a challenge for any kind of startup that's creating a physical product, because all of your funds are usually going into the creation of the product via cost of goods sold. So how did you initially fund the business, and were there any key moments that helped you break through?
So first of all, I probably did everything wrong. Okay, let's start there. I funded Beauty Blender, and again, let's talk about it being one SKU. It ended up being two SKUs with Blender Cleanser, but Beauty Blender, she's the queen. That was the focus,
Yes.
right? So I, again, was a very fortunate makeup artist. I was able to buy a home as a single mother eventually after working for many years. So the way I funded Beauty Blender in the beginning was to take out like an equity loan from my home. And with that money, I started my brand
Wow. Wow. Did you
during a strike, which was very risky because nobody was working. But I figured,
And from
got to
very
do it.
early on, with the money that you did put into the company, were you able to hit profitability very early so you could then continue to take the revenue from the business and put it back in? Or were there moments where you had to get some kind of bridge loan, or what did that look like early on?
Yeah, I don't know that I hit profitability for probably 4 to 5 years after creating Beauty Blender. So I mean, let's talk about the timeline. So when you're a category creator and there's nothing like you in the market, which Beautyblender was the first edgeless egg-shaped sponge, right? The first couple years of product development, money was spent towards trying to figure out how to make the product. Okay, so I became like pretty much like a a sponge expert, a fabricating scientist. I didn't know anything about machinery. Like all of these things I had to figure out. Fortunately, I was able to find people that were curious about my idea and were generous and helped me a little bit. But I didn't profit for many years. I kept working as a makeup artist, number one. That was how I supported myself and my daughter. I didn't profit for many years. And what I did do, though, was as I increased my sales, I would then just dump that money back into the company. So there was never profit that I was able to pay myself. That's why I said in the beginning I probably did everything wrong, because I know everybody has gone to business school, said, you pay yourself first. I was like, I was the last person that got paid ever. That's why I continued to have a simultaneous parallel career in makeup still.
Got it. Got it. Now, I'm curious because Beautyblender is a company that has been studied by, as you even said, by business school students, by people all over the world. So this is going to be a tricky one for you.
Oh boy.
Can you share a story from the early Beautyblender days that you have not shared publicly before?
Wow. Okay, so Beautyblender is over 20 years old, Sammi.
Yeah.
I feel like I've talked about this company in every way. That is a daunting question. One of the things I guess that I never talk about in the journey of Beautyblender, because everybody wants to know like the business of Beautyblender, right? And I know you do too, but I will also say that you have to be prepared for the physical toll that it takes on you. So like some of the stories that I don't talk about is, the early days of Beautyblender and me thinking I needed help, me thinking I needed another person to be involved, and that just complicated life and created so much stress for me. And then simultaneously being a single mother, working as a makeup artist, trying to, grow a brand that I'm passionate about. And I know that, if I do it right in any kind of way, can help get me to that next step in life where maybe I don't have to work so hard. Ha ha, that's a joke. I think the physical toll, that I never talk about that, but I ended up getting like thyroid disease, and my doctor said, oh, it's stress induced. So, some of the things that I learned early on was to try to safeguard and take care of yourself while you're on this amazing passion project to grow a brand. And I never really talk about that. No one ever asks, how are you, Rea Ann?
Yeah.
How was it for you? They want to know the numbers, but you can't continue to be passionate and grow in your business if you don't stay healthy. So that was an early lesson.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I hope that the narrative is starting to change now around entrepreneurship and the mental, physical, emotional toll that it takes on founders at all stages, right? The early days are tough, but there's a equal and different process as you're scaling and as you're then running a much larger company like you are today. It's different types of tolls, but you still pay the toll regardless of the phase that you're on.
Yes, there's no escaping anything. Sometimes we think, oh, I dodged a bullet. No, honey, that bullet's just coming around a different corner. Be prepared.
Watch out.
Yeah.
Once Beautyblender started gaining traction, what was the biggest operational challenge in scaling production and distribution?
The biggest operational challenge, because there's several challenges that happen at one time, and they're equally important, like, distribution mapping and the deals with your vendors and manufacturing supply chain. And Beautyblender is unique because I don't use 3PLs. I do everything in-house. So I staff assembly and my warehousing and everything. So there's all these different levels of operational excellence that have to happen in order for you to scale your business. And really, I think planning and having a team that's mindful about being very scrappy and realistic about the things you can accomplish and can't accomplish, which is ultimately going to result in profits.
Yeah.
And your ability to supply your customer. So they're equally important. So I think, planning and being realistic and honest, but also at the same time planning for forecasting growth. So I don't know if that answers the question,
No.
because they happen, real time happens and forecasting for the future happens at the same time. So being very clear and knowing essentially what you need there, I think, is so important.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I want to touch on too. So you mentioned that Beautyblender doesn't use 3PL. Everything from a logistics standpoint, warehousing is all in-house. Can you tell us a little bit about why Beautyblender decided to take that route?
So before Beautyblender was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where I've been now for, God, I don't know, 15 years or so, 16, even more. God, time flies. Being a makeup artist based in Hollywood, I started Beautyblender, and the cost of goods plus everything, getting, like trying to get my pricing down, I realized that one of the most important parts of that process wasn't just the product itself, but was actually getting the product to the consumer, right? Packaging it and shipping it and all the costs that are involved with that. And it was just very, very expensive. And even though Beautyblender, we created the category and we are the most prestige product on the market, it is the most expensive beauty sponge out there. It would have even been even more expensive, but because of the story that goes along with Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and the woman that I met that brought me there, she said to me, and Sammy, think about this is, 22 years ago. There was no e-com, there was no digital. The traditional ways of creating and distributing products was very different. So what that means was your distribution was in-store brick and mortar. So there weren't companies even around that really did 3PL. However, in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, the woman that brought me there and the woman that helped me, figure out my manufacturing said, hey, by the way, I think if we just created, and, the business was very small at the time. If we just created a small assembly operational situation for us in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, I think I can help you bring costs down. So for me, again, funding everything myself, that was a risk I was willing to take.
And I'm really curious about this mystery woman in Bethlehem. Is there a backstory there? How were you connected to this person? And that's a pretty big leap of faith to take operations from the West Coast and say, I'm going to move everything to this town in Pennsylvania that I may or may not know much about. So can you tell us a little bit about the story?
Knew absolutely nothing about Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I was a California resident. And although I traveled around the world, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania was never on that track. Okay. Yes. So, Sammy, when you have nothing to lose, taking risks are easy. Okay. Because I knew I could always fall back on my makeup career. Things have changed when your business is bigger. Risk taking is, you need to be a little braver. It was really a no-brainer for me to figure out how to save money and be able to keep producing Beautyblender, because I did have a finite budget. That equity loan that I took out, it didn't continue to grow. It just, we kept dumping the money back into the business, which helped us operationally. But in order to grow and scale, I needed more money. I needed to save money, and I needed to be able to use my money more efficiently. So for me, it was, listen, I just pack everything up, on some pallets and ship it to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and trust her. And, either it's going to work or it's not going to work. But I had a good idea about this lady already. She was the woman that on the back of the bag of sponges, the one company that I kept seeing over and over again based in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, she was the woman that answered the phone. So And
Okay.
she still works with me today too, which is
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, it's been over
Wow.
22 years. I call her my makeup mama. Let's give her a name. Her name is Catherine Bailey, and she was very instrumental in helping me just get Beauty Blender off the ground. And today she still helps me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love when you have those serendipitous life moments. And to me, that seems like there's something more than just serendipity of just you finding this on the back of a package and
Yeah, I call it God. I don't know what you call it, but
yep.
I'm a firm believer that I have a pretty good kind of like connection. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's really special.
yeah.
So I'm curious because you have this incredible product that had gone viral, or at least to the point where it was now considered a mainstream product. And building a sustainable company is a lot more of a ongoing challenge than just a one-off product. So, what was the biggest mindset shift that you had to make as you transitioned from an earlier stage founder to the CEO of a much larger company?
Oh, man. So I'm a creative. So I look at things very differently. I look at the whole picture and then figure out what I'm doing as a creative, as a makeup artist. You get a job, you know the character or your actors going to the Oscars, you look at what they're wearing, you coordinate, you do things as a team. That was a benefit to me, but to look at the team, to be a team player, let's say. But the biggest challenge for me was learning the back end of the business, the math. And I still am not great at. Like honestly, I am a creative. That's not my strong point. It's a actual forced discipline for me to have to really learn about forecasting, learn about planning, learn about budgets, and some of the hard things are the people part, I mean, there's so many things, Sammy, that were just unnatural for me to have to learn because I had spent over 20 years in this creative career doing things really completely different. I was doing things on intuition, not on facts.
And as you were scaling the company, at what point did you bring in people? Because you had talked about in the very early days, you potentially had some tougher moments deciding whether or not to bring people in. At what point did you really start bringing in a very solid support team around you?
Very clearly, I know that moment in time was when Sephora came knocking because you
Okay.
cannot be a brand at Sephora if operationally you can't support their business and the scale of their business and the way that they want to grow your business. So, I don't know so much now, with e-commerce and D2C and all of the omni-channel marketing and all the things that go on right now. I mean, but at that time, Sephora was very much a brand builder. And so you better be ready to build
Yeah.
when you go to Sephora. So that in that moment in time was when I realized, I'm going to need more demand planning. I'm going to need more savvy sales talent in those conversations. And just that was the moment.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
Sephora comes knocking, you got to be ready.
Yeah.
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 So, flash forward to today. I've read that you own 100% of the company. Can you share your mindset to not take on outside capital as you've scaled Beauty Blender?
Everybody's journey is different. So all I can say about that is timing is everything. So when you look at Beauty Blender's genesis and where Beauty Blender started, and then the virality of Beauty Blender was at this time of the digital world was just growing. It was just basically introduced to us as consumers, and then all of a sudden there was MySpace, there was Facebook, there was YouTube, and all of a sudden people were using people that were not beauty professionals but wanting to show their tutorials were all using Beauty Blender. So that's how Beauty Blender became viral, right? When you look at that timeline, the progress of Beautyblender awareness in the world was really growing at a really rapid pace. So my sales were too. My growth was very big and quick. And honestly, I didn't need the money at the time, and then not really wanting to invite somebody into the situation that may or may not be a good partner. And I wasn't really ready, and I didn't really understand enough about that side of the business, what it takes to bring in an investor and all the things that happen in the process. So for me, it just felt like safe to not bring in an investor. And it wasn't because I had a big master plan. It was really just about safety and security and not wanting to feel bogged down with the business. I needed to stay creative. So, I feel like when you start introducing partners into your business, you have to start participating differently within that business. And at the time, it just wasn't the right time for me to do that. I didn't know enough. I needed this journey. I needed to learn what it is to actually be an entrepreneur. I needed to learn what it means to run a company. I needed to learn what responsibilities a CEO has, and I find it's different in every company. So, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah. And I'm sure at a certain point, it took some degree of discipline because I imagine that private equity came knocking to say, hey, we know that this company, these products are incredible. They have a very dedicated, loyal customer base.
Mm-hmm.
And we would love to inject some of our capital to make Beauty Blender even larger than it is today.
Right. So again, the money, because we were printing money,
Yeah.
it was like the money. So bringing capital in wasn't really the goal.
Yeah.
What I wanted, or what I still want today, is to bring in the intellectual part of it, the experience. What can you teach me? What can you bring to the table that's going to secure the business better, make me feel better? I mean, and if it, listen, Sammi, I don't know if I was smart or stupid. I really don't, because again, I'm a creative person. I'm not, natively a business minded type of person. For me, it was just really scary. Suddenly, then I'm going to be married to someone who might be like sleeping with the enemy. I don't know, and because you don't know, everybody starts off nice, but when we have different perspectives on the same thing, that's when, you have to make sure you have a good partner, right? Good communication, understanding that you guys have the same goal. And, at the time, and even, today, those are still really important things that I look for whenever I partner with someone. I still own the business 100%. I don't have an investor right now, but I am in a much different point of understanding why people do it, and why, because I'm getting old. Like, how long do I want to keep doing this? I mean, these are the things that I ask myself now that I didn't ask myself 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, I didn't know I would be sitting here still right now.
Yeah.
It's just been a crazy, wild journey,
Yeah.
an amazing journey.
Yeah. Incredible. So I'm curious because a lot of beauty brands rely on influencer marketing today. But when Beautyblender first started, it was before influencer marketing was even a strategy. So I'm really curious from a marketing perspective, how was Beautyblender generating organic buzz back in the day?
It's such a great question, because starting the business, when we started the business, or I started the business, it wasn't Kathy and I mean, whoever was working with me at the time. When the business started, again, it was the beginning of the digital revolution. So when people were just uploading their videos in their bathroom, doing their own makeup and using a beauty blender, they weren't considered influencers. They were just considered people sharing what they do. We later learned how to monetize that. But for many, many, many years in our Beauty Blender history, we never paid an influencer. Of course, there was a time that changed, but the marketing strategy wasn't to monetize or pay an influencer for something we were getting organically.
Of course.
I do look at some other brands that were really smart and were able to kind of like have a moment of saying, you know what if I did pay them? What could I do? And so some brands kind of took that approach, but they were more like complexion brands and makeup brands, whereas I lived a very kind of secure life in this category of tools because people weren't really paying attention to tools. I was able to kind of like linger there for quite a while.
So I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit more of a hotly debated topic.
Uh-oh. Here it comes.
Let's talk about the dupes of them all.
Oh, the dupes.
So
yes.
copycats are inevitable in beauty. And
Beautyblender.
Beautyblender.
In everything.
In everything.
Yeah.
And Beautyblender has taken a strong stance.
Have they? I don't know.
So can you walk me through your company's decision to be very vocal about the dupes?
Right. I decided, Sammi, I have to be vocal about it because it's like, that bullet that I said keeps coming around. It just keeps coming around. The question keeps coming around. Rea Ann, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it? And I'll tell you, honestly, when you create a category, Sammi, you can't live in that category by yourself. You need to have competition to market against. So I knew that dupes were coming. Were they uncomfortable? Did they feel like cheating? Did I feel like you're just copying all of the hard work and money I've poured into my R&D and marketing just to turn around and take a snapshot and try? Yeah, I had all those feelings. I had all the feelings. But there came a time, there was a time where you just turn the other cheek and you market to being who you are, and that is the category creator, the prestige version, the made in America version, which is very important. We don't talk about that too much, but maybe we will be a little bit more now. I don't know. So I decided to take a stance on it because it was the question I was asked more and more and more. So, I realized that, again, because of the timing of when Beautyblender entered the market to now the digital world that we live in, there wasn't really a need for me to tell the story of Beautyblender, how it was created. Like, that wasn't a part of the marketing, right? Like, oh, she's a professional makeup artist. She lived in Hollywood. Like, people that understood a little bit about Beautyblender and did research would learn that about me. But we didn't lead with that information because really it was about trying to just provide the best makeup application without a learning curve, the easiest way to do it to a consumer. But when you start to see the knockoffs try to enter the same economic space where you are, then you have to kind of take it on. So, even to this point right now, the dupes and the knockoffs that you see on the market are all made outside of the US. Let's just call it what it is. They're made in China, all of them. And the difference between Beautyblender and those dupes, and what I feel compelled to have to talk about now, is the quality and the difference, and it being medical grade foam, that we have certain proprietary ingredients that you are just not going to see in China. And by the way, that's why it's a different price range. And just some of the, really major but fundamental differences between Beautyblender and the dupes. So it's this two-edged thing, right? Like, I need competition because I can't be alone in the category, but do not think you're getting the same thing, because you are not getting same thing. And the people that, and this is another thing I learned too. Oh my God, Sammi. So there's so many things. When Beautyblender came on the market, that consumer now has kids. And so that first consumer that learned about Beautyblender learned the most information about Beautyblender, because I had to do a lot of talking. I had to explain why the egg shape, why pink, why are you washing it, why are you keeping it cleaner. Like, there were all of these things that were just really new concepts in beauty that I had to talk about. So that early consumer got all the benefit of the information. But when her daughter or her son, whoever is using, cosmetics or Beautyblender, came of age to use Beautyblender, they missed out on that information because now we had started talking about other things, right? We started talking about new products. We started talking about moving into different categories. We started talking about the things that our retailer wanted to talk about, right? Yeah. So there was a time that she had a child, and that child then thinks everything's a beauty blender. They think every rounded sponge is a beauty blender. We've become a category. We've become a Kleenex. We've become a Q-tip. But no, Beauty Blender is the brand. It's not the product.
Yeah.
So, but now that kid is having kids. So we have 3 generations of Beauty Blender users that I now have the opportunity to talk about dupes and educate about Beauty Blender. It's like a full circle moment. It's so beautiful. It's so amazing that I've been able to stay here this long to be able to talk to 3 different generations. So I can just keep educating and talking about it. And I think that's what really compelled me to talk about the dupes, because it's an opportunity for me to talk about the superiority and the trust that people have given me for over 20 years with Beauty Blender.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. The fact that you've been able to educate literally generations of people about your product. And I will say, I think the approach that you're taking to be very vocal and factual about the differences of your product versus the other ones out there, it's an amazing approach, honestly, because you can't ignore them. They are everywhere, and that's dupe culture. They are going to exist, and even if you don't acknowledge them, they're still going to be there.
Listen, and it's not my point to disparage them or talk badly about them. It's my opportunity to talk about why I'm the better choice. Yes. Why you pay a little bit extra, but you save a little makeup and you save a little time and you save, like, there are so many benefits and things that I talk about that I realize these other generations really missed out on hearing about, because I didn't have to talk about it so much. People just knew Beauty Blender was the best choice. But now everything's a Beauty Blender because we've crossed over into this, this area of, I don't know, you're probably too young to know who Don King is, but it's a kingism. Like, I think I've created my own word, just genericism. Like, you get to the point where you're like, people think that Beauty Blender is every kind of sponge, but it's not.
There is an actual term.
What's it called?
Yes, genericide. And so, which is actually similar to the one that you just...
Yeah.
Yes, and it's when a company name, such as a Beauty Blender, becomes a full name of an entire category. Right. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly it.
And speaking about the different customer segments that Beauty Blender has, and perhaps even the understanding, the education that each customer segment has that uses the product, I want to talk about the customer base, because it is incredibly diverse, ranging from
very broad,
from everyday makeup lovers to professional makeup artists. So how do you balance the marketing and product innovation to serve both of those audiences?
It's very difficult, but you have to focus, right? Like, I'm a broad thinker, again, creative, right? And to your point, our consumer base is very broad. I have such a low barrier to entrance. I have a 9-year-old granddaughter, my glam baby, Ivy Jane, who is one of these kids that storms into Sephora and wants to, buy everything, right? I mean, think about that. Like, that was not why I created the brand. It wasn't for a 9-year-old. But here we have, 6, 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-olds having birthday parties at Sephora now.
Oh, yeah.
And Ulta. And, so I start very young. And then I have, everyone in between. I can talk about, the makeup nista. I can talk about the young mother who has no time. I can talk about, men and this emerging market. You can talk about the menopause stage of life. And then you can go into your 50s and 60s, 70s and talk about like this no fuss life experience that a person gets as they get older. They just want to look better, but they don't want to spend a lot of time doing it. They want it easy. I mean, Beautyblender wins in every category. And that's, again, why we're still here. But in terms of marketing, like you have to pick a lane. And it doesn't mean you stay in that lane all the time, but you have to kind of, move from that lane into other lanes, but always come back to that lane, So it's about focus and planning.
One of the last questions I have for you is on your career, and you've built this career full of incredible milestones. Which milestone are you the most proud of?
Oh, you're making me pick kids again, Sammy. You can't pick your children. I have two. Can I share two?
Yes.
Okay. So, one of the most fundamental things that I'm most proud of is being manufactured, made in America. My organization is based in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, like one of the founding states of the United States. I keep people employed. I feel proud that my people are able to support their families, that I didn't, go outside of the US to create Beautyblender, which I could have done very easily. But I'm very proud to be a female founded woman of color based in the United States. That's one. The second most crazy and amazing milestone that happened to me that I could never see, one of those bullets coming around the corner, something that I could never have ever dreamt big enough about, is the day that the Smithsonian Museum of American History came to me.
Wow.
And wanted to include me in an exhibit of 8 women over the course of 100 years that invented something that changed their industry. And my little Beautyblender, me and little Beautyblender, we're in the Smithsonian. I mean, wow. I could not ever have seen that coming.
That is an incredible accomplishment and one that anyone should be incredibly proud of. But I think just being such an innovator in your space and having that product be recognized on a national, global level with an institute like the Smithsonian is just incredible.
Listen, I don't know what's going to happen in the world. We are in a crazy flux right now, but I can say with much confidence that no matter what happens in the world, my great, 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 great grandchildren will be able to look up the Smithsonian and see me sitting there smiling with my little Beautyblender. So it's a very, very big, immense honor and a big source of pride for me.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get into a different part of the podcast where these are questions that I ask every guest.
Oh, boy. Oh, God. Okay.
Can you share one system that you have in place that benefits your career or business?
Oh, that's easy. Yeah. So that system for me is, again, as a creative product developer turned CEO, I learned very early on that it's very easy to get distracted by people giving you advice, right? So the one thing that I always do when I try to do that focus is to always look at my business through the eyes of a professional makeup artist. So what that means is when I'm product developing all kinds of innovations, I have to ask myself, would I use this if I was a pro? Or would I think it's a gimmick? And I use that in business too. Like I look at staying in that lane when I'm making decisions. Like, of course, I'm going to make decisions that are going to be the right decisions to be able to supply to my retailers and .com and all those things. But really, I use that professional makeup artistry lens through most of my decision making.
I think that's brilliant. Always having that view, and it brings you back to the place where you were when you got into this business to begin with.
It's hard though, because it's easy to be distracted and told that you should be looking at it from this perspective, that perspective, but I can always just put that lens over whatever I'm trying to consider, whether it's D2C, e-commerce, Amazon business, dealing with your retailers, trying to innovate. Like I just try to always use that lens.
Yeah. All right, so the next question comes from our social currency corner, where I get your input on a big trend that's impacting either business or culture. So one of the buzzwords in consumer right now is this idea of quiet luxury. And so I'm curious, what's your take? Are you more of a quiet luxury or a loud luxury, and why?
Oh, God. I'm both at different times, because I'm not that linear. I'm not that's as a creative, like sometimes I'm quiet luxury and I really love it. I love the unassuming, the like rich doesn't look rich, kind of like, oh my God, the wealthiest person in the room looks like a vagabond sitting in the corner. Like, I mean, I love that, but then I love the fanciness of prestige and beauty, and I love luxury. I love luxury. I love them both, but I do try to stay kind of middle of the road between those things. And it is a real trend that is, propelling innovation in the way brands, whether they're, fashion or wellness or beauty, are, creating products, because everybody, and this is a thing about dupes too, like everybody wants to feel like they can have luxury, but there's a difference between fast fashion and couture, right? Like, and I believe Beautyblender is couture, where, when you get into these other areas of thinking about luxury and what it really means, there is fast fashion that does kind of satisfy the wallet and the self-confidence. And I get that. But you have to look behind the curtain a little bit too. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm quiet luxury and I am loud luxury too. I love it.
You contain multitudes.
I am. I'm a complex human.
Okay. All right. So let's end with some advice.
Okay.
For this part, I asked my audience and look online to see what business questions are top of mind right now. Here's a question that came in from the audience. Is there ever a right time to start your own business? I have $30,000 saved up for my business idea, but I keep thinking I've never done this before. I need more cash. So should I even start even though I don't know what I'm doing?
I mean, come on now. I mean, the ultimate goal is to have a business if you're thinking about it. And if you don't start, you're never going to have the business. So, I mean, this is a very easy answer for me because it's exactly where I was. Yeah. So, yes, take that $30,000 and try to start your business with 10,000 of it and see where you get. Keep moving forward. If you don't move forward, you will not succeed. So the thing is that the passion you have for this business idea you have has to be the jet fuel that moves you forward every day. And then don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to really try to sit down and be focused about what can I do in the first couple months. Where do I want to be? What am I trying to achieve? Whatever, I don't know what the business is, but if you don't start, you won't get there. So absolutely spend that money and learn.
Great. Yeah. Just do it.
Just do it. For Nike. Yes. Just do it.
Thank you so much, Rea Ann, for coming on today.
Oh my God, I could talk to you forever.
You can find Rea Ann and Beautyblender across all socials. I'll link them in the show notes. But my one request for people is to specifically go onto your Instagram, because you have this amazing series called Behind the Chair. And it's a little story time where you share the most fascinating stories throughout your career. And it's really fun to listen to. So everyone should check it out.
Oh my God, thank you so much. Yeah.
Rea Ann, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Sammi. It's so fun to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you for slipping into my DM.
Anytime. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Social Currency. I've been wanting to launch this show for so long. I can't tell you how excited I am to do this and how thrilled I am that you're actually here listening. It means the world to me. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and review the podcast, because it massively helps to support the work I do to bring the show to life. And if you want to keep up with the hottest business lore in real time, follow me on Instagram at Sammi Cohen Talks and subscribe to my newsletter, Social Currency, which is linked in the show notes. Social Currency is a production of Social Currency Media and Money News Network. The podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Sammi Cohen. Social Currency is produced by the Money News Network team. See you next time.